What is going on currently this year? What is going on recently? Worldwide, we've been hearing in certain areas of the fact that there has been a categorization of knockouts, of power outages, and distribution scenes. Those certain knockouts are one of two equations. Number one, they're hitting in return and pushing into something of a new system. Number two, the conjunctures of the Nibiru X and Nibiru Y, the two polarized higher subsystems itself, planetized grids, are think how an eclipse goes. And then it goes into a full-on eclipse. They're one's behind the other. Now, it says there's two different types of events that could happen with the Nibirus. Either it goes to Anunnaki races and the main star generators, the star gods, to bring about better civilization, a better age, because it does run on numerical timelines, or what humans discern about in an apocalypse.
Everybody, welcome to episode 60. Blue, how are you?
I'm great today, Mike.
Hey, what are we going to talk about today in episode 60?
One of the things we'll be discussing about is the Shoshone Ice Caves, the Native American princess escape, elemental reconditioning after the caves have been excavated from its ice, and the manufactured events of how it even stays cold in the first place, how it did, and what certain aerial effects underground hit certain magnetic zones, as well as inner world acclimated events.
Wow, sounds interesting. I can't wait to get into it. I looked at the other show notes as well. I'm really excited about today's show. Hey, before we get started, before we get going here, please make sure you go ahead and like, subscribe, click on notifications, follow, all those fun words so you're notified when we post new material here. And of course, if we're not on a platform where you prefer to get your stuff, let us know where you get your stuff and we'll get on that platform where you get your stuff. Also, check it out. You could be part of the team here. Go ahead and check out the link for the merch in the comments there. And we do respond on the socials. So if you need to reach out to us, feel free to reach out to us on the socials. Blue, let's get right into episode 60.
Absolutely. The Shoshone Ice Caves in southern Idaho near the Shoshone Twin Falls are much loved tourist attraction nowadays. Nothing out of the ordinary seen from above. You go down below, you're going to hit something very particular and peculiar. And all year round, they have an activated event of saying it's the same degrees here. Certain cold temperatures and keep the ice on perimeter with it. The formed underground eruption is part of a black crater lava field. He's looking for his lost ghost, discovered the Shoshone Ice Caves by accident in the 1880s. But what gets interesting is it goes a little bit older than this, because we're dealing with the Native American Indians again. And that's one reason why I say it's the Shoshone. The find was perfect, and the reason why it was excavated, because the find was perfect, and they would use cold beer all year round, so they would pick off the ice from it to do that, until eventually it came out. It gotten rid of totally. Somebody recently took care of that. They bought there, and in the 1950s, a man named Russell Robinson bought the caves, and he restored the ice. But what's interesting is when you restore that ice, it still go back to the way it originally was, cold. But when this had happened, it goes into the Native Americans. So it's rumored to be haunted. They had heard whispers, allegedly, ghosts of an Indian princess who had been, her spirit had been planted there until it had gotten thawed out. We got so many similarities that go in conjuncture between how one polarity zone hits another, and it always ends up in the Native American heritage. And then something else goes more paranormal with it. Whether it's ET, whether it's spirits, we have to go much deeper in an understanding of certain things. And this certain ice cave, just like other tunnelized systems, hits certain currents of a heat or cold substructure. And those currents would either stay at that elevated mode of effect or reverse it. Because it has a certain climate controlled area, and a lot of the planet does have hollow areas that humans are not aware of, tunnels, land conjuncture systems, the inner world. This is just one more out of the abnormal, and including the falls as well, which we will discuss about next.
All right. See, I wish I had known about this. Why? I probably knew about it. I probably just missed it somehow. But I was just out that way. I was just near Idaho there, and I would have stopped by. So just let me make sure I'm clear what you're telling me this is. This is like underground. You go underground, and there's ice there. But above the ground, you wouldn't expect there to be ice. Like it could be a normal temperate day, but underneath the ground that far, it's that far underground that there's ice.
It's like a certain amount of tube system itself, like an ancient maybe lava tube system or substructure. You know, a lot of caves have some types of systems. This itself just goes to a certain distance, but because it hits certain aerial effects underneath, it keeps at a status temperature and locks that in. Unless perimeters were hitting exemplatory, and they had disengaged off the tunnel too when they were excavating at one time, and did screw up that substructure as well. When it was locked in like it was, it kept the ice in. Areas underground can be different than other areas underground.
It's amazing to me, and I put myself in the mind of the person who first discovered this. Can you imagine? You don't know what ice is or anything. You're underground in this cave, and all of a sudden you come up with this. Is there any thought that this might be connected to some of the other underground things that we've talked about? Is it possible this is connected to Argartha somehow?
Yes, in a way it could, but also we had the Native American spirits. And obviously it was a sacred spot. Obviously they wouldn't have a princess, so-called, of their tribe stake there. So there had to be reasons deeper than the perceiving of the current stance that's going on now as a tourist attraction.
Yeah, obviously
Native Americans.
Oh, it's just to say, obviously they use it as an attraction nowadays, and they kind of exploit it in a way. But that was going to be my question. You know, you always see these old horror movies or whatever, and that house was built on an ancient burial ground or whatever. You know what I mean? So was this originally a disrespect thing, and then the Native Indians, the Shoshone, took it back over, or is this a thing that they've always controlled, or is this disrespectful to go there?
I would say respect the spirits that may still be trapped there, because they do hear voices way in the walls and like children even. You know, and maybe there's a link up to something else altogether.
We're going to have to start putting like a map together and putting pins in a map, like all the places we want to, like the places that we've talked about that maybe we want to visit. And then maybe I can get somebody in the PR department here at the Mike Stofka Broadcast Media and see if they can connect or reach out to these people. Maybe we take the show on the road sometime and go visit these places. That would be a wonderful thing, I think. Is this a year-round thing, that there's ice underneath there year-round?
Yes. Now that it's been reestablished again, it should be. Wow. There was a time that it wasn't, and they had dug all the ice pretty much out until someone had bought the area.
Like I know it gets cold in that part of the country, and I know there's You know, on my recent trip to Yellowstone, I noticed that I came across a stat out there that they get between 500 and 600 inches of snow a year. My God, that's outrageous. That's a lot of snow. And so that's not far there. Part of the park there, Yellowstone, is in Idaho. And I just it amazes me that we keep learning about these new places here. I'm so happy and thankful that you point these things out. Do you think this is something just restricted to that area, or do you think there's other caves like this elsewhere?
Of course, there are many other ice caves out there. There's lava or ice tubes. Ice tubes. There's lava tubes out there. There's initial tunnel ice systems. There's ice caves. But the perimeters go all the way around. Just it hits certain areas. It's not going to be all around the corner. You know what I mean? You're not going to just see it everywhere. It's pinpointing at certain locations.
I see you have something else here written about a waterfall. What's going on with that?
The Faroe Islands in Denmark, strong winds create such a barrier effect throughout the day that it maintains a reversal waterfall effect. That reversal waterfall effect, it's a more of a natural phenomenon, but because of that natural phenomenon, people, when they see it, they perceive it to be paranormal. What gets interesting is this diagnosis stream can be manipulated. So being able to maneuver water around and exemplify that term on a reverse effect through a certain amount of aerodynamics, of air quality, it can control the interface. And I mean, similar to aeroplanes and certain status codes with aerodynamics. The Faroe Island waterfall is one of its kind indeed. Inverted waterfalls tend to occur when a strong gust of wind blows into a regular waterfall, and it keeps that upwards. They have a similar effects to other areas, but this is the main attributor.
So let me get this straight. I hear what you're saying. I just want to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying. Looks like a waterfall, but water is moving up, not down.
Yes, because of where it's located at and the amount of wind control, it has a constant push because of that wind control upwards from the water particles itself. And
That's
because
crazy.
of that control, it brings everything upwards from the water.
That's crazy. There's a place here, and for those of you that don't know, we do this show from two separate studios in Florida, in Central Florida, in a town called Lake Wales. And I used to live in this area. That's why I know about this. There's a place called Spook Hill, and you can park your car on Spook Hill. And they got it worked out. Like, they got a painted line, park here, and you put your car in neutral and your car rolls uphill. Now, I get chills just talking about this, but it's a pretty fascinating thing. So if you find yourself in Central Florida, there's a couple nice things to do. There's Bach Tower, etc. But the Spook Hill thing is free. Just roll. It's like by a neighborhood. It's not even, it's a very, you would pass right by it and not even know it, but it's labeled. It's called Spook Hill. So I implore anybody to go there. Imagine your car rolling uphill. That's the same thing we're talking about here, I think. And is this something mystical? Is this something ancient? Is this something spiritual? Or is this something like a quirk of physics somehow?
Well, Spook Hill actually goes into electromagnetism control. And how hyphenated areas of effect can be more articulated with that type of gravity. So this goes also into what we would discuss about next: gravity inversion, electromagnetic push and pull control itself.
Yeah, please.
That conjuncture on its own proacts with the terms of moving and motivating a certain impulse frequencies. So gravity and magnetic inversion are powerful geophysical techniques used to model subsurface structures based on gravity and magnetic field measurements. valuable insights of the distribution of density and magnetization within the Earth's crust. The reason why we are talking about this is because the priority effects that there are sequencing bases between four polarity scores for different types of planetoids. We got the sun, the moon, Mars, and the Earth. And believe it or not, they had certain NASA missions to converge on this and see where the control is with the electromagnetic fields that prioritize between the moon structure and how high and low the densities are. And we got to understand, and what we're going into talking about with Spook Hill is there is a push or pull of an electromagnetic event. That place has much more of a disturbance of what goes on from down underneath the crust upwards. That's why conversions happen between the sun and the moon and the Earth, although we already know that they have a conjoining effect with the higher terrestrial races and maintainment speeds that self-free up government. Gravity control, inversion control, electromagnetic and magnetical control. In this type of control, if we go even deeper, we're talking about Nikola Tesla and how he had pinpointed about that boundless energy out there that can be coordinated from underneath upwards. There is a refined field effect from the magnetic sphere that surrounds the actual planet itself that creates certain densities and structures from underneath as well as from up above. And they could and they do co-align to certain events that are in particular with the moon and the sun. Mars circulates broadband variety variable, meaning it's on a lower spectrum.
Very interesting. You know, I only knew about Spook Hill. I didn't know about the Faroe Islands here. It sounds like this could be a tourism thing, but I kind of looked it up a little bit. It looks very desolate. It looks like there's not much there. Is this a thing kind of like the Shoshone Ice Caves where, you know, people actually travel far and visit this and it's set up for tourism or no?
Well, from that itself, what I was trying to explain about, because it goes into polarized magnetized events. The ice caves don't run into magnetism. They more or less run into certain heat and cold substructures. The priorities of what you had just stated won't run into magnetism. And when certain areas of effect hit through that, it can affect the fields around you. It can affect the fields around certain other items and things. Because the polarity is much different. It's in trajectory with another magnetic field itself, and it's hitting against that. There are certain areas in the planet that have these higher magnetic fields, like I was stating about Nikola Tesla, and that could be controlled in variables from underneath.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Magnetic fields hit from up above too.
Yeah, we've talked about that time again, and it's amazing to me. I don't think we can go a show without talking about either Tesla and or Musk. It's incredible to me, but I enjoy doing it. Hey, what are we going to talk about next year? I see on the notes here about Nibiru.
Yes, the conjunctures of the Nibiru system. What is going on currently this year? What is going on recently? Worldwide, we've been hearing certain areas of the fact that there has been a categorization of knockouts, of power outages, and distribution scenes. Those certain knockouts are one of two equations. Number one, they're hitting in return and pushing into something of a new system. Number two, the conjunctures of the Nibiru X and Nibiru Y, the two polarized higher subsystems itself, planetized grids, are think how an eclipse goes. And then it goes into a full-on eclipse. They're one's behind the other. Now it says there's two different types of events that could happen with the Nibirus. Either it goes to Anunnaki races and the main star generators the star gods to bring about better civilization, a better age, because it does run on your local timelines. Or what humans discern about in an apocalypse, that the planet, that system would hit the Earth and cause the impact. This itself wouldn't happen. But there have been made events where both conjunctures had hit frequency with each other, both systems, and caused major electromagnetic impulse frequency disturbances on fields. Certain areas of effect to hit broadband more than others, and it could cause withdrawals of range structures, withdrawals of other more planetary defining structures that are not normal. Then with this undefined motion, it creates a high energetic wavelength with these Nibiru systems too, that hits and pinpoints certain neural streams on the entities that have been scattered abroad upon the realm.
This is crazy because we've talked about Nibiru in the past, and so are you saying there's going to be some sort of event, some sort of activity, some sort of ultimate disclosure type thing, and it's all going to come from Nibiru, the Anunnaki?
Well, Nibiru systems and the Anunnaki run through councils of higher terrestrial races, and yes, that's more than half of them run through humanoid races. They look human, but there are different coding effects, like Palladians, Nordics, Anunnaki, Lemurians, Atlanteans, Sided, or Venetians, some of them. And some of them are subspecies, which run through the gray races, including the NK gray, the Ankh, as well as the Zeta Reticuli. And they do coordinate with the pyramids. They do coordinate with the other civilizations of Atlantis and the ancient civilizations that maintain the code of ethics numerous times over for mankind. And that's why they go into what the Tensor arcs are. They're instruments, and I did send you a couple photos in these races. They look like one of them was an avian. We talked about the avians before, but the ancient bipedal forms. And they are run through the councils of the Anunnaki, of the generative councils, and as well as the giants themselves. There are certain giant species they had talked about before. Those as well. Now, what they hold, what the avian holds, and this gets interesting, is an impulse drive that coordinates as a GPS order. And what is in front of them, this certain Anunnaki figure holds, is an actual Tesla or Tensor arc itself. The Tensor arc itself distributes being able to magnify and manipulate certain impulse frequencies, including magnetism. So one way they were able to utilize magnetism and move objects with magnetism and anti-gravity propulsion streams.
You know, it's crazy. And that's
the more like a Tesla. Sorry about that.
No. I was just going to say it's crazy because you brought it right back. You brought it back to what we were talking about before, and that's what I find fascinating. Now, if I understand correctly, the Zeta Reticuli, that they run kind of with.
They're one of my species.
Yeah.
One of my subspecies, yes.
And they're partners or in conjunction or friendly with the Anunnaki?
Partners with the ancient Galactic Council, the Anunnaki. Now, there are certain substructures, like many other races, that go astray, and they don't dedicate to the right priority streams. It's mentioned that before in Divine Orders. And then there are others that stick to their main order of event, what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do it. And it goes into the scepter. It goes in to Moses, to Aaron, to the pharaohs, and even current standards. We have the rod, the snake, scepter. Where did this originally come from? The rod is always something that holds a great amount of power. The scepter, it would cause healing. It would cause some type of event, some type of paranormal activation speed. It would do something to help the entity that's with it. This rod is scepters more than one time throughout the ages. It was brought by the ancient councils, and there are only certain hierarchies that hold it. And I'm very certain that the Vatican holds and hides certain scepters and rods in their libraries or wherever they keep that.
Well, yeah.
Nowadays.
Well, yeah. If it doesn't fit the narrative, you can't put it out there. I mean, you got to keep the story going. You got to keep the thing alive. That's what we do so well in this world nowadays. Is we promote, and we have TV, we have the internet, we have shows like this. We have talking about things and constantly bringing things up and putting things out there. And if you haven't noticed, folks, there is a lot of heavy slant in the media, and it's amazing to me, because in researching through some of the show notes that you sent here, I noticed that there's quite a bit of debate out there that Zeta Reticuli and Anunnaki beings have been here on the planet and have been controlling the planet all along. Do you find that to be true, or do you think not?
There are numerical races. There's the Intergalactic Council that perceives and pulls things into motion. They run through a council. A council runs through numerical races. And it goes into one of these other pictures that I talked about, the scepter and the rod. One of these Anunnaki entities was holding one, and it had specifically pointed to what looked like the sun. In the event of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pointed turns into 7, the middle, and had a planet in conjoinment around it. What's in the middle but Nibiru itself, the subsystems. And if you look closely and you make an indent speed of that perimeter, that picture, and you look at that sun in the middle, you take that and you split that apart. You're going to notice it's darker, and there's like a little ring indexing. It looks kind of like it's conjoined, like the sun and the moon. But maybe it is not the sun. Maybe it is something altogether in front of it. Or maybe that there's two conjoined speeds that lock up to perimeters of events that have happened through every so many thousands of years here.
You know, I've read the Bible. I've studied the Bible. I found it quite interesting that you brought up Aaron with Moses. For those of you who may not know as much about the Bible, and I don't know everything. I just, I read it. But Aaron was Moses' brother, and he was the mouthpiece, because Moses supposedly had some sort of speech impediment or some sort of stutter or something, or wasn't real confident in speech. But this scepter of life, does that have the same power for whoever holds it? Or is it a type thing that only works for certain people, or what?
Well, the gifted activation code would be held for certain entities, but if someone holds it, that property itself, whatever type of frequency drive that was implemented into it, can be controlled by them as well. They may not know how to utilize it, but there are ways. Of course, there are other ways to make higher types of, more technological types of scepters that could totally disengage, but only the wearer, the property owner itself can use.
And this is going to blow my mind, but I'm wondering if this isn't misunderstood technology in some way. Because if you also go back to the Bible and you talk about the Ark of the Covenant, there's some speculation as to what is in the Ark of the Covenant, where it is. There's certain speculation that it could be the Ten Commandments. It could be some sort of futuristic nuclear device or something. My question is, do you think this scepter has some sort of out of this world technology that we just don't totally understand? And maybe thank God it's locked away.
It has some type of what humans would call magic property. It has a controlled property on it that can create paranormal, higher normal effects. And we've talked about certain SCPs before that have same type of notions. They can create some type of anomaly.
Hey, are we ready to talk about the SCP Foundation?
Yes, SCP-099, The Portrait. It's a painting titled The Portrait, created in 1935 by Soros painter Rene Magritte. Original painting possesses mimetic properties that trigger acute paranoia and lingering psychological effects when viewed for too long, or from a distance of approximately 3 meters or less. It depicts a simple still life with the addition of a single eye staring back at the viewer.
Does this look like something? To me, it looks like something that, not quite a Dali type portrait here, but it just looks, it's uneasy to me when I look at it. And let me explain why. For years, I was in the food and beverage industry. The fork and the knife are wrong. You know, I'm not one of those, OCD people, but at the same time, is that what's unsettling? The fact that there is an eye looking back at you and maybe things in the picture aren't exactly the way most people would have them or desire them, or maybe what we're conditioned to accept?
Well, those who have viewed the painting for too long or for too close of a distance become subjugated to the delusion that they are being a depiction of a being with eyes staring back at them. And in extreme cases, they report inanimate objects are making eye contact. The condition can get so severe, though, that the subjects leave and report making eye contact with individuals whose heads are completely turned away. Depending on the length of the original exposure to the painting, subjects may suffer from this condition until death, resulting in severe paranoia and ankylophobia.
Is this something I need to worry about? Is there just one of these portraits, or is there different types like this and maybe we just don't understand it yet?
Well, it's stored away now by the Foundation, and it was acclimated at an art gallery at one time. So they have continuous work, obviously. They have people who surveil it, and it's kept safe. But I would consider more of a Euclid perimeter, meaning it won't harm anyone, like on a major scale, but it still would be self-induced on a mind control perimeter, and it would cause problems neurally to a human or entity.
Is there any indication as to who made this, who created this?
It's a cover from a private collection at Cave Sage, another surrealist painter. Cover is performed on NTF that of a Pink Panther. It's the stage unaware of the cover and placement of the recovered investigations. Says she was unaware of its properties and was either immune or careful not to look too closely. So that type of entity may have come into the gallery. It may have been something as more of a spiritual in descent, or something that's more spirit inclined and connected to that inanimate object and utilizes it, whether it's positive, negative, or in between. And was in a way able to use some type of manualized control through it.
And I'm looking at the notes here. This next one really, really kind of blows my mind here. Tell me about SCP-233.
Sided Polyhedron. It's a 23-sided polyhedron, each face being made both with an equilateral triangle and a straight line simultaneously. Because of the space-time altering codes nature of the object, the exact physical makeup of the object cannot be emulated in 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional form. So because it maneuvers space-time itself in certain geometric properties and is able to give out many types of advanced formulas and equations to geometrics and mathematics, it's been posed as a type of an asset to things.
You know, it looks to me like
But,
it looks to me like I don't know if anybody was like D&D people, Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, but one of those multi-sided dice or die that they would normally have in a game like that, like a role-playing type game. But at the same time, it also, to me, resembles, and we talked about this in the past about other items that kind of look like a Pokemon ball, like that. Is this about the size of what that is? About, like, I could hold it in my hands, or is this something bigger or smaller?
it can change alteration and shape and form. And you got to think about lines that go into numerical events and then right into the middle. And it can, because it creates a physical distribution through the laws of matter. It maneuvers its geometric form. And like I said, it's the usual property of altering the laws of mathematics and its density. It alterates the laws of mathematics in a way. Space-time alteration. It proves a benefit for the Foundation. I'm sure it has proved a benefit for other corporations. But it can cause rounding errors to occur unless calculated using a base 23 system. That would be the only way to work it. Mathematical calculations carried out in base 23. However, in the benefit being carried out 23 times the normal speed.
Wow.
So they are also working with the polyhedron as well to see what it can do to make equations a bit better.
Is this something that,
on certain terms?
is there only one of them and it's contained, or is this something that there's more of these?
Well, control of the equational mathematics interface. I'm pretty sure that scientists and certain secret governments, they would already start affiliating something similar that could possibly pose as an asset. This itself runs in a higher conjuncture that still needs to be learned about, because there's some things about it on there that are not. It can alternate its course.
Interesting stuff. I love it when we talk about the SCP Foundation. So what's going on with this blackout?
Well, further analysis, besides the Nibiru conjunctures and the systematic electromagnetic high impulse fields that would reject on things, causing unnatural weather patterns, certain nanoparticles could be knocked off that perimeter. And we already know about certain nanoparticles in the air that causes problems as it is. They're manipulative. Then we have quakes in certain places. Those acclamations could be as an underground cleanup, but as well as those impulse fields are maneuvering things from the underside up. And as well as the electromagnetic impulses that are affecting the grid system itself, the electricity, computers, phones, you name it. A cooperative level between certain secret governments and or military and psyotic events to clean up. Or it would be called digital warfare behind the scenes against negative entities, organizations.
I'm going to stretch here. I'm going to reach real far here, but if I don't ask, I won't know. We've covered Q on this show several times. As in our title there, we've divulged who Q was. We've talked about it time and time again. We kind of got off Q for a little while, but those who have followed the Q post know that there's some sort of blackout or something supposed to happen there. Are these two one and the same, or are they related?
Well, we already had numerical blackouts go on and off the perimeters for a few years now, but there have been major doses of it. And that transacted speed could be similar to its property, but it could also be maintained on something else as well.
It's kind of crazy. Crazy stuff. All right. What do we have to report from the Space Force and the Federation?
Biden recently got sick with COVID, and then it just recently drops out of the presidential race and nominates Harris.
I hate to interrupt, but how could he have COVID? Doesn't he have like 16 and 4 booster?
Just happens. It's funny how it all happens.
Convenient, huh? Very convenient.
Assassinated.
Sorry, go ahead.
He disappears too. Not many people know what's going on with him right now.
Yeah.
Of course, he's got that Gormon in him, that Arc Demon. So maybe he went back to his den for a while. All right, forgive me for that. But you know what? They don't have it right. They just don't. So, and then it goes into just recently hundreds of migrants leaving the southern Mexico just to be in a new caravan headed for the U.S. border again. Where is the laws that maintain? I mean, it goes for people here currently too. Codes of ethics. Maintaining your codes of ethics. Not just coordinating and corralling everyone all over the place, all willy-nilly. There's good, there's bad, there's in-between crowds. Start using your ethical standards and protective layers where you're founding certain perimeters for and understanding who those entities are. Because otherwise, and since the office of the Harris and Biden administration come into effect, there have been too much violence going abroad, too much harming of children, too much drugs, cartel. And we need to clean stuff up from the inside out. We need to start prioritizing that every human citizen starts dedicating themselves in the right wavelength. If there are negative entities there, or ones that don't understand lawful standards, maybe putting them into better lawful standards instead of harming others where they're already at, and even the planet. Good can come from things, but we got to find a stability. We have to.
Interesting stuff as always. I'm very fortunate that we have the time to talk about the Space Force and the Federation every show. Are we ready to talk about ET of the Week?
Yes. Ancient races, the Anunnaki, describes the Anunnaki, Anunna, and other variations are a group of deities, higher entities, the ancient Sumerians, Akkadians, Syrians, and Babylonians. Now, don't think about the human race portions. Think about higher civilizations that were brought here from other dimensions, other planetized systems, and then maintain the codes of ethics for the fates of humanity. And it talks about them from earliest Sumerian writings, which come from the post-Atlantic period, deities and descendants of An and Ki, Anke, An and Ki, Anke, the Anke, what we were just talking about, the Anke Greys, with the tombs and the pyramids in Egypt that they discussed about before. Now, let's think about races and then other higher civilizations that were reformed from those races and brought generative codes onto lower beings and prioritized them for maintaining the codes of ethics for realms.
Good guys, I'm assuming, just because what we've talked about in the past.
Yes, and the intergalactic ancient councils that maintain the codes of ethics and the fates of humankind several times over. And you look through timelines in the past, they have talked about catastrophes and or something moving forward or some types of advanced civilizations or periods of time. It always links up with some type of higher race in some way.
Interesting stuff. I love ET of the Week. I love when we get to explore and talk about these other things here. And I love how we tied it all back. Everything came full circle again today. And I think that's, that's just what we do. So I'm very thankful. Great job today in episode 60, Blue. Just, hey, remember folks, Go ahead and make sure you like, subscribe, click on notifications, follow, all that fun stuff. And you can always reach out to us on the socials. Blue, again, excellent job in 60. I look forward to 61.
Thank you, Mike.